Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I am going to be sharing my time with the member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan. So, how do we end up with this report from committee so that we're here today talking about it? Well, I'm going to give just a little bit of background. So, we signed a trade agreement in 2020. This was CUSMA. This was almost 3 years ago. And in that agreement, it specifically stated that we would not allow goods made with forced labor to be imported into Canada on its own or through supply chains. And so I've been very curious as to what the progress has been made with respect to this and on this file. The Minister of International Trade actually came to committee, and I had the opportunity to ask her with respect to this what progress had been made, and in particular with respect to goods seized from the Xinjiang region of China. As we know, there are real challenges with goods that are being made there in the People's Republic of China. And so the exchange I had with her was, have any shipments been seized as a result of this at the Canadian border? Do you track that? Her response was, I believe that there are. And then she went on to talk about some bills and other things. And I said, but is the department keeping track of this? Are there any numbers that you can release to this committee? She didn't have any numbers to give to me, but finally said, absolutely, I'm working very hard with the Minister of Labour and my colleagues to ensure that we do have the mechanisms into place to live up to this important thing. And went on to say, what I am saying is that the commitment by the Canadian government to ensure there is no forced labor in our supply chain is something that is very real and something that we're working on. So this prohibition started in 2020. The minister is saying in 2023 we're working very hard on it and we believe we received some shipments. So as a result of that, I did an order paper question on this, and you might be very surprised at the answer. So the order paper question was, with regard to government measures to stop the importation of goods made using forced Uyghur labor in China since 2016, how many times have goods been intercepted at points of entry in Canada by CBSA or the RCMP? What are the details in each instance, the description of goods, quality, estimated value, etc.? Well, you'd be shocked to know that the answer that came back is absolutely nothing. Zero. Zip. Zilch. So in 3 years, this government has not been able to seize a single shipment made by forced labor from the Xinjiang region of China. It's a shocking, shocking abdication of responsibility. The minister has done absolutely nothing on this. The Minister of International Trade has done absolutely nothing on this in the past 3 years. And if you want to look at CBSA, well, the Minister of Public Safety, he's also completely abdicated his responsibility on this. They've seized absolutely nothing. And you might say, well, what's the problem? This is probably a complicated thing. Well, guess what? It's not. Over the same period of time, the United States has seized more than 1,400 shipments. So they're taking this seriously. They're living up to their obligations in the CUSMA trade agreement. $1.3 billion worth of goods is what they've seized over this period of time. What has Canada done? Absolutely nothing. It's all talk, no action. Not only on this, but on virtually any file you want to talk about with this government. But this is a really important one. And you know what? The Liberals are going to say, Madam Speaker, well, it's really difficult to do this. You know, it's hard to figure out where it comes from. Right, it's very hard. Guess what? The United States has actually put together an entity list. A list of companies that they know that are very clear that they are using forced labor in their supply chains or directly for the manufacture of their goods. So guess what? That list is publicly available. I have it right here, Madam Speaker, the entire list. If it's so difficult, the minister could cut and paste. Look, I know that's hard. So the Minister of International Trade, she has time to approve a contract for her friend, a very lucrative contract. But what she doesn't have the time to do is cut and paste the entity list that the United States has created as a result of our trade agreement. I know we all have to make priorities. I think a former member of this place, Mr. Dion, said, you think it's easy to make priorities, and I suspect that that attitude has leaked into the current government, because cutting and pasting, this is a very, very difficult thing to do. So, $1.4 billion worth of goods seized from the United States, 0 from Canada. This is embarrassing, Madam Speaker. The Minister of Public Safety and the Minister of International Trade have completely abdicated their responsibilities on this file. And no matter what they say, there's no excuse, because there's an easy-to-use list. And the United States is not the only one that has a list. There are all kinds of organizations around the world that have done investigations into this, and they've produced the lists. So how is it that we can't give a similar list to CBSA and say goods coming from these companies must be intercepted at the border? I don't know, Madam Speaker. I think it takes about 10 minutes. In fact, I'd be happy to table this document so the minister can pick it up, get someone to type it up, and send the instructions to CBSA. I know, it's hard work being the government, but they're not willing to do any of that hard work. And this problem, Madam Speaker, is not getting better. There is a report by World Vision, and they say, listen to this, right? And again, bear in mind that the government's done absolutely nothing on this. When I say nothing, I mean nothing. We got the order paper question back. They've done nothing. Unfortunately, Canada is a significant contributor to the global problem of using child and forced labor in supply chains. As this report reveals, Canada imported nearly $48 billion of risky goods in 2021. And they go on to say that this represents a nearly 30% increase since 2016. So talk about being asleep at the wheel. I mean, they're not even at the wheel, and the problem's getting worse all the time. And I don't understand what it takes for them to actually spur themselves to action. I've asked the minister at committee about it. There have been questions on it in the House of Commons. And again, I go back to the fact that it's not all that complicated, right? The United States has published a list. They acted quickly, and not just published a list, Madam Speaker, they also passed legislation. December 23rd, 2021, President Joe Biden signed into law the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which bars the importation into the United States of products made from forced labor in the Xinjiang region of China. So I became a lawyer because I'm not very good at math, but this is almost 2 years later, December of 2021. What has this government done? Has a single piece of legislation been passed? No. Have they given instructions to CBSA to seize goods from the known list of entities? No. So they have not, and what's even more glaring, Madam Speaker, is at one point there was an article that they talked about this, and CBSA said we seized one shipment to try and say that they were doing something. But in answer to the OPQ, they've seized absolutely nothing. But you know what, Madam Speaker? I apologize. I said that they didn't do anything, and that was incorrect. They actually put out an advisory. They put out an advisory for Canadian businesses that are doing business in the Xinjiang region. I mean, stop the presses. 2 advisories saying you should check your supply chains. Well, hear for the hard work that was done by this government on this file. Madam Speaker, this government should be absolutely ashamed of what they've done on this file. They should be embarrassed of the lack of action that they've taken. The minister should be embarrassed. The Minister of International Trade, she should be embarrassed because she's done nothing. The Minister of Public Safety, he should be ashamed as well. They've done absolutely nothing. It takes very little work. The United States is a trusted partner. They're part of our Five Eyes intelligence network. So guess what? If they've published a list of companies that are using forced labor and seized $1.4 billion worth of goods, we could do the same thing. But they don't do it, and I'd like to know why, Madam Speaker.